everyone, it's Eve back again with another Map Chats. It's just been so much fun so far. I really have loved doing these. So I've already done two, one with Maps by Owen, which is posted on my account. So go and check that out. Owen's just a really lovely, crazy guy from the UK. And then I've also done one with George, aka the reclusive cartographer, and that's posted over on his account, so you should definitely go and watch those videos because, yeah, as I say, they're really lovely guys and really talented cartographers, and you might get some use out of those videos. But today I'm very excited. I've got a very special guest, one of my absolute favourites in the community, and it's Niklas from Past Peculiar. He's kindly said that he'll come and talk to us all about his creative journey, his maps and his monsters and mushrooms. So yeah, Niklas, if you want to add yourself in, hopefully the Wi-Fi is going to stand up to the test. I do have my phone as a backup. We can try if it doesn't work. But yeah, so we'll just wait for Niklas to come in. Hopefully it's going to work.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me all right?
You can hear me, that's good. That's a good start.
Yes, absolutely.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm very warm. But I've got a fan just like beaming onto me, so hopefully I'm not going to overheat during this video.
Yeah, let's hope for that.
Okay, so if you just kind of like want to introduce yourself, tell everyone, the good people of Instagram, about you.
Sure, absolutely. Hi everyone, I'm Niklas, and my Instagram handle is Paths Peculiar, and I'm a 40-year-old dude from Sweden, and as an amateur artist, I draw dungeon maps and world maps and stuff like that for fantasy role-playing games and science fiction games and stuff like that. So gaming influenced art, basically.
It's really awesome art. Like I just love your style. I think it's really unique, your style. I don't see a lot of other artists producing stuff like you do, so kudos to you.
Thank you very much.
Your art.
Thank you.
And also just for being like I find you are very supportive of other smaller channels, and you're always welcome. You're happy to answer questions and stuff like that, and I think that's a really positive influence in a community such as ours. So yeah, thanks for just being a stellar guy.
No, absolutely. I think that's really important, because I mean, even if I feel that our small niche, our small community is kind of growing. So there's a lot of new, really every day, and there's a lot of new artists joining the scene. And I think that's so much fun to see everyone's work, and I think we can learn a lot from each other. So I mean, helping and supporting each other is really important. I think I try to do it as much as possible. So yeah, absolutely. I would encourage anyone to do the same, really, because the hobby is growing, and we can really support each other in it. So.
It's a very good message. I think we should get that on a t-shirt.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So people who are watching, feel free to drop comments in the chat, but I'm going to kind of like ask Niklas various questions that I'm curious about, and then if we've got time at the end, we will come back and answer those questions that you've put into the chat. But I guess my first question to you, Niklas, is kind of how did you start all of this? How long have you been mapping / doing the Dungeons and Dragons art? Yeah,
the thing is, I've always been kind of interested in drawing. I did a lot of drawing when I was a kid. I was super influenced by comic books and stuff like that. My father taught me how to read by reading, old Donald Duck magazines and stuff like that. So
the best way to read.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I've always been kind of interested in art, and as a kid, I drew a lot. I drew all the time, and also I'd say as a teenager. But then, I mean, for several years, or I mean a decade or so, I didn't really draw. I mean, I was still kind of interested, but I didn't really draw actively. So, but then I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, I decided that I really wanted to develop this hobby and start drawing more actively, and develop, because I hadn't developed since I was a kid. Basically, I was still drawing okay-ish, but I wanted to improve my skills. So I decided back then that I wanted to kind of not schedule, but set aside time, like almost every day, to at least draw for a couple of hours and see if I could develop. And since I've been interested in role-playing games for a long time, role-playing games and board games and computer games as well. That was kind of well, it felt natural to start with that kind of art. So about 2 years ago, I started drawing more actively, and as I said, trying to set aside time every day to do at least an hour or 2 hours. I think that's really important also. I mean, everyone can draw, but you need to realize that you
practice.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going to ask you about time management later on, but
yeah, sure.
I think definitely consistency and like discipline with stuff like that is just, it cannot be underestimated. You know, even people who are born with a God-given talent of being able to draw, people who practice every day, I think will end up outshining those people eventually, just through their dedication to practicing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who doesn't draw a lot, or really any type of creative hobby, we talk a lot about talent, as it's something you're born with. And while that might be true to some extent, I mean, it's probably like some people have it easier than others, but for most people, their talent isn't really the issue. Training and practicing is the issue, like with everything. So no one kind of just realizes one day they're great at drawing and start producing great stuff. That just doesn't happen. You have to set aside time for it.
Yeah. Was there a particular kind of like event that sparked you to like think, I'm going to try really consistently to do it? Was you kind of like involved in a D&D group that you wanted to do it, or did you see somebody else's work? Was it just like one day you woke up and you were like, today I'm going to really put my all into drawing again?
No, I don't remember if it was a like special event, but I picked up a notepad from a company called Field Notes, and they make these really lovely notepads, and they had dotted paper. I hadn't seen that before, so I just picked up the pad because I thought it was really cool. And then I decided, okay, I want to fill this notepad with drawings, and so it was kind of started with the material, actually picking that up. And then I was thinking, okay, what should I draw? And when I was a kid, I used to draw these, vertical maps that you see from the side. I used to do it in the summertime when I wasn't allowed by my mom to play video games because we were out traveling or whatever it might be. So then I tried to recreate these video games as vertical maps. So I was basically drawing versions of Metroid and Super Mario Bros. And stuff like that. So I started actually drawing some vertical maps in that Field Notes notepad. And then I started Googling because I thought it was really fun. So I started Googling, seeing if anyone else had done it. And I encountered Dyson Logos, who I think is a great cartographer. And he's done some vertical geomorphs, he calls them. And I found those really, really cool. So I wanted to try to kind of emulate that. And so it started with vertical maps in a Field Notes pad. And from that, it just went on and on. So. And nowadays, of course, I draw not only vertical maps. I still think those are really fun, but I also do top-down maps and some isometric stuff. And so, I tried different styles, of course.
You shake things up,
Yeah.
That's one of the things I really like about your account is kind of like the diversity of things that you draw. Because a lot of people kind of just focus on one thing. Like at the moment, I'm only kind of like exclusively doing world maps, and I'm thinking about doing other stuff in the future. But what I really like about yours is you've got kind of like monsters and creatures and those kind of things. You've also got little kind of like icons of houses, and then you've also got your maps and things like that. And that kind of diversity makes it really interesting to look at. And also I expect it's pushed your the development of your style to try and integrate more things into your artwork?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's always good. Of course, everyone has their own style and probably a style that they prefer and feel comfortable with. But I think it's probably always a good idea to try different styles because you can learn, you can implement things from one style into another one, and yeah, so just play around a little bit with styles. But it's also because I'm quite easily bored. So when I draw the same kind of
Me too.
maps for a long time, yeah, I really need to kind of change styles every now and then and try different things. Yeah, just to keep the energy up and keep the creativity alive. So yeah. And by the way, your world maps, I'm so pleased to see the newest the Skyrim map you did.
Yes.
Such a wonderful map. You really nailed the aesthetics of that one. It was such a great map and
I'm
of course
really
such a great game.
Yeah, well, it was kind of like my homage to the game because I just spent so many hours playing it, and yeah, it was just really fun to draw. And yeah, if anybody wants a print, there's still like maybe 10 left, I think. So if you want them, I'll just do a little plug. But
it's wonderful.
Thank you. I'm glad that you liked it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so your style's kind of like very distinctive. How did you choose that style? Is that something you just sort of started drawing like that and then it developed like that, or did you draw from different inspirations and think, oh, I want my aesthetic to kind of be like yours, which is quite, as I say, quite distinct with black and white with the stippling?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to kind of trace back how your style developed, but as I said from the beginning, I was quite inspired by Dyson Logos work, but also I draw a lot of inspiration from old school D&D and role-playing games, and also old Warhammer fantasy, so Gary Chalk and some of those artists. And they have a certain style that I try to emulate. It's a lot of black and white, of course, a lot of ink, and while I didn't really succeed in emulating their style, from trying to do that, I kind of developed my own style. But yeah, so it developed over time. Quite early on, I started playing around with stippling, the small dots.
How many pens have you gone through doing stippling?
A lot of them, yeah.
So many. I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's painful, but it's fun actually. And the thing with stippling, it takes a lot of time, and which can be, of course, frustrating, but it's also kind of relaxing to do because it's almost meditative, that you can just disconnect your brain and go about it. So I enjoy that, and also I think it's a quite rewarding technique as well because yes, it takes a lot of time, but it looks pretty.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So, and also I think it's
oh, sorry.
I think also it's a quite forgiving technique as well, because when you go about the dotting, you can make small mistakes and those won't really show up. So I'm working with ink. I'm always, of course, cautious not to make too many mistakes because there's no undo button.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of nail it from the beginning. But stippling is quite forgiving as a technique, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think not in all cases, but I think stippling for me kind of looks better than the kind of like etching style that I've seen other people do.
Yeah.
But obviously it's a time payoff, and the etching style can work well if you kind of like do it in a certain way. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the stippling.
Yeah, it's and as you say, I mean, it is it's a time aspect of it, but since I like to say that I'm an amateur artist because I don't take commissions and I don't really draw for other people. So time is not a problem for me, really. I mean, it's fine if a drawing takes like forever, as long as I don't get bored of it. But still, I don't have the pressure to produce something. I don't have any deadlines or anything like that. That's quite important for me also because that's what I enjoy. Also taking it in my own pace, and it's fine to spend a lot of time on one illustration.
Yeah. Okay, so how did you choose the name Paths Peculiar? I think it's a really cool name.
Yeah, thanks. Now, I don't remember exactly what the reasoning was behind it, but I think what I'm trying to do with my maps is that I kind of want to create some sense of wonder, some like a fantastic feeling of the fantastic, something from sword and sorcery, and just depicting places that are out of the ordinary. And I guess I feel that those places are hidden away somewhere in the backwaters of the world, and you need to find some really strange paths to reach them. So I think that's
cabins
kind
with
of
evil mushrooms in them.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, and I've always been a fan. One of the aspects of fantasy that I really like is the typical heroes going on a long journey and reaching places where no one has been in 100 years, and all that stuff. So it's I try to. I think a lot about the journey of fantasy literature and gaming, and I think that's something I also want to invoke with the name Past Peculiar. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that definitely. Yeah, now you've described it, I can definitely see that kind of like the road untrodden kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
People are doing like mysterious things on paths and going off and disappearing. I can definitely get that from Past Peculiar. So yeah, I really like that name. And so we've already talked about kind of like, you've mentioned that notebook that you found and the kind of like that you go through a lot of pens. Do you have any specific tools that you really love to use? Is there any kind of recommendations for people?
Yeah, sure.
Notebooks and pens and things.
Absolutely. I'm going to go inside. I actually brought out some of my drawing equipment. I can go
show
through
and
it.
tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
So, because I do get a lot of questions on this. Every time I post, people ask me what notepads I'm using and what pens and stuff like that. So, and I've also listed all my gear on my website. So if you go to my website and check out the tutorials, there's a listing there of my materials. But I'm going to go through some of them here. So I'm going to see if I can switch the camera. Yeah, there we go. So let's start with the pens here. And I've tried a lot of different brands. Hang on. But the ones I've been sticking to for quite a long time now is the Copic markers. These are these are very similar to, let's say, Pigma Micron or Unipen, or these brands are very similar. So yeah. I guess it's a bit of a matter of taste, actually. But for some reason, I prefer these ones. They're a bit expensive, but not super expensive. So, and I think that they last for quite a long time. So that's fine. And they come in different sizes. I try to keep quite a lot of different sizes. I think that helps a lot when you draw maps, that you can vary the outlines and details and stuff like that. So yeah, I have a few different sizes. I think the one I use the most for all the line work is a 0.2. There we go. This is just these are the same actually, but the silver one is one with a replaceable nib, and you can replace the ink cartridge while these are disposables. So yeah, this it's a nice one, and I use it a lot. Then I also, something I got quite recently was a good pencil, because I haven't really been thinking a lot about the pencil. Just been using a very cheap Pilot pencil, but then for some reason I picked up this one. It's a bit more expensive,
very
but
fancy.
Yeah, it's quite fancy. Again, it's
like
a bit more.
Pen.
Yeah, it does. It is more expensive, but not super expensive. So this is a Pentel Graph Gear, and it's just a nice feel to it, and it also has a good. Not sure what it's called, the tip here. Yeah, exactly. So
it's like
this one is nice. It is. So you don't risk damaging it. So this one is a nice one, and since I picked it up, I actually do a lot more sketching with pencil, which is nice. So yeah, these are the pens.
You get something that makes you want to create more.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we're going to have a look at the different notepads I use. So for my isometric drawings, I use these Hanemühle, and it's called isometry block or isometric paper. And you can pick this up basically everywhere on Amazon or wherever you shop your art supplies. And this, as you can see, these are lined for. Yeah, no, these are all drawings, but these are lined for, or the guides are for isometric drawings. So just to help you with the isometric perspective, because it's quite tricky. I find it super hard to do without these kind of guiding lines. So yeah, let's see what we have here. We have a couple of different ones.
Is it a notepad, or is it like actual single leaves of paper?
It's a notepad, but they tend to break off easily. So yeah. So yeah, this is I draw quite a lot of isometric, as you might know. So and this is super helpful. And then finally, for my top-down maps, I use Rhodia, which I think is a really good notepad. I like the paper quality of this one, because it doesn't really absorb too much ink, so it doesn't leak out when you do the outlines. So yeah, and this is the kind of pad I talked about before, that it has dots instead of a grid. So this helps a lot, I think. And yeah, there's a lot of different stuff here. So yeah, I think that's the main gear I use for drawing.
Yeah. Do you have like a specific place that you draw, or do you just kind of draw wherever you feel the urge takes you?
Me and my fiance, we live in a 2-room apartment, so I don't really have a studio or anything like that. So I just sit by the dining table, and I have a lamp, a specific kind of lamp to help me. Lamp? Not a very fancy one, but it helps. It's this one. Okay. Just to get the right kind of illumination when I draw. So.
Oh, very good. Well, hopefully some people will see this and they won't need to ask you about your paper.
Yeah.
And I will ask you now. So you've mentioned you've got a website.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff do you post on there? What can people expect from the website?
I post, most of my stuff I post there, but of course, since I'm mainly focused on maps, there's a lot of maps. There's so many maps on that website.
There's so many maps.
Yeah, and I don't sell any maps, but rather anyone is or all of them are free to download for personal use, as long as it's not commercial or you kind of publish it elsewhere. Because I really think one of the most rewarding things is when I hear about people using these maps in their own games and their own role-playing campaigns. That makes me super happy. So I try to keep everything free for download there. So I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. I've been pondering getting a Patreon, but we'll see. Not right now, at least. But also, more than maps, I have a few tutorials. So if you want to try out map making yourself, you can follow my tutorials. They're quite simple, and also other types of typical role-playing illustrations like weapons and gear and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of everything, but the main focus is maps.
Yeah. Well, I've actually used your kind of digital. Hand-drawn to digital tutorial, and I found it to be really useful. So
great.
Anyone watching, you should definitely go and have a look, because it's a fountain of knowledge.
I'm glad to hear that.
And so you've shown us that you do obviously traditional hand-drawn maps.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried digital? Would you ever do digital in the future? Is that something you're interested in?
I've tried digital mainly when I was younger. I still use digital a little bit. As you know, I use Photoshop to clean up my drawings when I digitize them. I usually add like a little bit of shadows sometimes in Photoshop. But I think I do prefer the hand-drawn maps, because my day job, I sit in front of the computer all day. And we're always messing about with our phones and iPads and computers and stuff. So it's nice to have a hobby where I actually get away from the screen. Yeah, exactly. So and also I like the the feeling of doing something with your hands. So and the feel of the paper and how the ink is behaving and all that stuff. So I don't think that I will switch over to digital. Not right now, at least. So yeah.
No, I think it's the same for me. I have got the tools to do digital art. It's just I just find there's something so much more satisfying and like kind of it definitely feels a lot more homemade when you do it yourself.
Yeah.
It kind of feels more authentically me when I do hand drawn stuff, whereas apart from when I've tried to do stuff on an iPad or on Photoshop.
Yeah.
So I definitely can understand why you would be reluctant to move over to digital, especially when you can produce stuff that does look so kind of like clean and nice with your hands anyway. You wouldn't even necessarily need to use digital because
No.
as I say, it just looks very clean anyway. So
Thanks.
and so in terms of kind of like your favorite cartographers and other artists in the community, do you have any that kind of stand out for you? Maybe a top 3 or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I really like your maps. I think they're gorgeous. Also, there's a few I think that really stand out right now. Shea Manweiler is one. She's called Monocled Octopus on Instagram. Jog Brogson is really great as well. I love his isometric work and his mega dungeons. They are so impressive, and I can't imagine the speed that guy draws. He produces so much stuff. It would take me years. It's like, it's so fast and it's so clean and cool. Really good concepts as well. Joshua Stollars, I think he's an American guy, perhaps Canadian. He does really good stuff, and sometimes when I try on overland maps, I tend to look at his stuff. Also Owen, who's been with you in the channel before. I think Owen is great. See, am I forgetting someone? Dark Realm Maps is really good as well. He draws in a quite similar style to me, and we kind of have similar concepts. I mean, we both do a lot of dungeon maps and stuff like that. So, but again, as I said in the beginning of this chat, there are so many new, really talented cartographers and illustrators right now. So there's so much good stuff out there. Yeah, I agree, and it's just so many more new people coming every day, just adding little bits of newness to the community, and I just find that it's so interesting how, you know, in reality, kind of like a map there's a similar concept for everyone, whether you're doing a city map or a world map or whatever, but how everybody brings their own flavor is just kind of magical, really. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so some of my favorite things that you draw are kind of like your dungeon maps and your traps and things like that. As somebody who's kind of like a dungeon map newbie, what makes a good dungeon map? What makes a good trap? Have you used your maps in your own D&D playing? Yeah, absolutely. I use some of my maps, not all of them, but yeah, I do use them. As for dungeon maps, I think what I try to do is to think about the playability of the map. So when I draw it, it shouldn't just be a beautiful map. It should be something that I think that the players would have fun discovering. So is this location interesting enough? Are there enough kind of hooks in the map that you kind of pay attention to, and does it play with your imagination? I think you can always look at good game designers, and there's this woman called Janelle Jacquez, and she was a game designer for TSR back in the Dungeons and Dragons days, and she's also been working in the computer game industry, and her kind of dungeon maps or even level maps for computer games are probably the best ever done, and she has a really cool approach that her maps are never linear. You can always take different paths to reach your kind of the goal. And there's a lot, just just small things when you plan out the design that makes it more fun to play for the players. Because, for example, dungeons, I see a lot of beginners who draw dungeons, they tend to make them very linear. So you go from one room to the other room to the next room and so on. And there's not really a lot of choice there. But in Jaquays maps, they're never linear. There's always different kind of choices to make, and these choices have consequences. So it makes it feel more like, more fun for the players, more exciting.
Well, I think it's
to
like
explore.
real life. When you have kind of like this decision, and if you take one route, then you'll never know what happens on the other route. And I think it's that kind of like intrigue and pressure of choice to create like, oh, maybe if I go this way, then this is going to happen, but I'll never know unless I go that way. But I can
exactly.
Go ways.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's I hadn't really thought about that, and I hadn't heard of her before, so I'm definitely going to go and look her up after this.
Yeah. There's actually a blog called the Alexandrian, and the guy or girl behind that blog has written a series of articles called Jaquaying the Dungeon, which is based on General Jaquay's work. So that's a super good tool for new designers to kind of read up on that, because you get so much good advice from those articles.
I'll see if I can find the website afterwards, and I'll post a link to it.
Yeah, I can post you a link. I can send you a link. So.
Yeah, I can edit it into the biography part of this live, so people can have a little look-see, as well as your website. What's the favourite? Have you got a favourite dungeon that you've ever drawn? A favourite trap?
I think
in general a favourite drawing.
I'm going to see if I can find some of my favorites at least. I'm just checking my notepad here to see if I can find it. I've drawn a couple of like top-down dungeon maps that I really like. Let's see. I should have prepared this in hindsight, but never mind. I think these kind of maps. This is the Arcane Chambers, and I like them because they're a bit whimsical. I mean, they're a bit silly, and it's like it's the kind of, I guess, dungeon that I would enjoy as a player to kind of explore. So I think some of those are probably some of my favorites. See if I can find something else. I also like this one. So this is supposed to be kind of a way station or toll house in an underground, along an underground trail. So this mixes both, natural caves with constructed dungeon rooms and stuff like that. So I think this one is kind of neat as well. So of course, would follow a peculiar path to reach this place. So yeah.
And how did you follow any kind of tutorials and stuff to start drawing the dungeon maps? Or was it again just from seeing other people's and you thought, oh, I can try it like this? Was there any specific like videos or anything? I
don't think there were any specific tutorials back then that I remember going through, but I did look a lot at there's a website called Fantastic Maps, and it's an Instagram account as well. They actually, now I remember, yes, they do post some tutorials I used, but also, looking at a lot of other people's maps, and as I mentioned before, Dyson Logos was a big inspiration when I started out. He's done so much, so you could go through his maps all day long. It would take you a year probably. He has so many.
Good use of a year, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's a really, I think, he's a good designer. He makes interesting layouts and really interesting dungeon designs. Again, he creates places where you actually want to play. So yeah.
Okay, so what would you say are your best tips for beginners, either drawing dungeon maps or other types of maps and icons? We mentioned it earlier on that you have to set aside time for it.
and just, I mean, if you can set aside 1 or 2 hours per day, I think that you will develop really quickly in the beginning. So
do you have any kind of specific time management tools that you use to create that time? Because I know a lot of people are like, I'm too busy, I don't have time to do it for 2 hours.
No, not really, but I usually draw in the evening. I mean, after dinner is, we had dinner at home, and everything is kind of, all the chores are done. I just sit down for a couple hours. But no, I don't really use any tools for it. It's just, you have to kind of be a bit disciplined about it. So.
Yeah. Well, for me, I use the Pomodoro. I don't know if you've heard of it. Kind of, because I get very easily distracted. I'm kind of like, ooh, this, ooh, that.
Yeah.
So I draw for 20 minutes, and then I have a 5-minute break where I can go and do something, and then I come back, and I do that, and I try to do maybe a 2-hour period of doing that. Yeah. And that helps me, as somebody who easily gets distracted, to achieve something.
Yeah, I think breaks is a very good point. Allow yourself to take breaks, because it can become tedious, especially when you're drawing very detailed maps. So, I mean, taking a break, taking a glass of water or whatever you want to do, just take a breather every now and then is important. Also, I mean, sometimes you just don't want to draw. I mean, you don't have inspiration, and you don't feel like it. So, I mean, give yourself a break then. You don't have to draw something every day. You shouldn't feel the kind of pressure to do something if you don't enjoy it. Sometimes you get an artist block, and just, you will have to wait it out. Sooner or later, the inspiration will come back.
It will. Especially if you follow a path that is peculiar.
Yes.
Maybe there's some inspiration down those paths.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of dream projects or bigger projects that you're thinking about doing in the future? I mean, if you are, you don't have to spoil them, but is there a kind of end goal with what you're trying to achieve, or as I say, a bigger project that you'd like to work on?
I don't know if I have an end goal. I mean, I'm thinking a lot about my own fantasy world or campaign world, but I try not to make it too detailed. So I don't have a big world map. I don't go into, some world builders, they love, coming up with politics and different countries and religion and all that stuff. I try to not go that way, because then it feels like you have to fill every corner of your world. So instead, I kind of draw what I want, and then try to squeeze it into my world concept. Yeah, exactly. And so I guess that's an ongoing. All my illustrations are an ongoing project in one way. But I don't like to see it as a project, if you get what I mean. I rather see it as something that develops over time, and it doesn't have an end date where it needs to be done. A more kind of focused project is probably my science fiction setting. I've done a few science fiction maps, and I call that setting Termination Shock. That's actually something that might become a real product sometime in the future. I haven't set a deadline for myself. Yeah.
I was going to ask if you consider kind of making them into modules and stuff like that.
Yeah, I might actually do that. That's something at least I'm having on my mind, so maybe doing that. And then, I mean, I like doing small things. I like to do, one-page adventures or just small dungeons, a few pages. I'm right now working on a project to make a small, settlement for, to insert into any fantasy campaign world. So it's called Four Tower Bridge. And that's basically done. I just need to kind of put the last few pieces together. So hopefully I'll get that out soon. So, because since drawing is a hobby for me, I don't want it to grow too much. I don't want to kind of, again, set deadlines for myself. This is a way for me to relax, so it should feel relaxing. I don't want it to feel like it's my job.
Yeah.
So
you want to have boundaries around your creativity.
Yeah,
think
exactly.
that's very valid, especially if you know that it's definitely not something you want to be as like a full-time job. Then
No.
making sure that you have boundaries about what that looks like is very important.
Yeah.
And then kind of I wanted to ask you about just the Dungeons and Dragons scene in general. Like, are you playing in any games currently? What's the D&D community like in Sweden?
Yeah, I think Sweden has, since like when I was a kid in the early 80s, fantasy role-playing games have been a really big thing in Sweden. When I was a kid, we didn't play Dungeons and Dragons because we had a local game that was much bigger over here. Today we have several role-playing games companies releasing superb games, really cool stuff. You have Free League, who just released the official Alien role-playing game, and they've done Tales from the Loop, Mutant Year Zero. Also, we do have several good game designers who work in the OSR, the old school Renaissance genre of role-playing games. One of my favorites right now, I'm going to swap my camera again, it's Mörk Borg, which is really cool indie art punk game.
Well,
it's
really,
super dark.
I've been asked to take part in a game of
Yeah.
Worldbuilding, and yeah, I was kind of curious as to what your thoughts were about it and stuff like that, because I'd never heard of it before.
No, it's actually it's a couple of friends of mine who did this one, and there's a Swedish version and an English version. The name is the same, but it's like this. It's based loosely, I would say, on Dungeons and Dragons, on old school Dungeons and Dragons, but it's like this super grim, dark fantasy game. It's hilarious because it's over the top grim. So a bit like, you know, the British Warhammer kind of approach to fantasy. I really love it because, I mean, it's a beautiful book. It's a solid game. It's not too heavy rules, so it's not too complex. So if you get the chance to play it, you really should. I think it's a great game.
I am sold.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it.
And then I'd like to show one more game, and that's Old School Essentials. This is made in Britain, actually, and it's called Old School Essentials, but it's really a clone of the Dungeons and Dragons rules from 1981. So it's actually an old game that's been relayouted, and it's really, well, it looks nice. It's easy to kind of digest the rules here, because the old role-playing games or the early versions of,
wow, the art's beautiful.
Yeah, the art is great. So this is made by a guy called Gavin Norman from England, and he's done such a good job. I think this is probably one of the most popular games to be released lately, not counting, of course, the official Dungeons & Dragons, but no, this is the game I'm currently playing, actually. So yeah. But
are you DMing it, or are you just playing?
I'm DMing, so
You're DMing.
so yeah.
Do you prefer DMing or do you prefer playing?
I like both, but I think I prefer DMing, because then when you're a player, you only play when it's playtime, basically. But as a DM, there's so much stuff you can play around with between sessions. So again, drawing maps, coming up with new adventures, preparing, and whatever it might be. There's so much creativity in the hobby outside of the playing sessions. And as a DM, I think you can really tap into that creativity.
Yeah, I can see how DMing works well with the kind of stuff that we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Constantly being able to create and explore all the different avenues that your players could potentially throw at you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's all of the questions that I had kind of prepared for you. All right. I just want to say thank you for coming on and talking to us. It's been a pleasure just hearing about all of your thoughts on the subject, and thank you for just making great maps.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to join you.
I will just quickly check that there wasn't any questions that we haven't already covered in the chat. What kind of paper do you use? We'll answer that one. Oh, No, I think we're all good. Okay.
All right, great.
Well, in that case, I will say adieu. And I'm going to be posting this on my account after we finish the live. So yeah, people can come and watch all of it. If you've missed the beginning and you've only just joined, then you can go back and watch the beginning.
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, Eve.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.